Welcome to A Simple-Minded Report. Today's episode 1, World War I. So basically, this is how it went down. You got Germany. They're in the middle of Europe. They're centralized. They're kind of controlling the trade market because they're in the middle of it, and they want to get an even bigger middle. They want to expand through Belgium, through France, even a little bit of Russia, hit up those oil gallon jugs and take that up, because it's good for trade. Basically, they want to expand, make themselves bigger, and they also really want to capitalize on agriculture and farming. They want to get that food and trade it. Basically, they want to dominate when it comes to trading and just owning it up, taking territory. And this is all directed through the Schlieffen Plan. There's this dude, and he basically thought up of all this stuff. And, well, basically, they did this, and during World War I, didn't really work out. They did some stuff before then, and it appeared to work out, I think, where they, would try to basically kind of infiltrate areas and then do a peace treaty afterward, be like, hey, we're cool, but we're going to claim this territory. But it really didn't work out during World War I. But we're going to get into that. So basically, it's 1914. You know what happens? There's this dude, Archduke Franz Ferdinand. He's this dude that's a part of the Central Powers, which is basically Germany and Austria-Hungary and who else? Ottoman Empire, Bulgaria. Basically, we're going to refer to this group as the Central Powers because they're the center of attention. They're out there seeking conflictions, if you catch my drift. And so you got these guys they're up against. We're going to refer to the opponents of them is the Entente Bros, which is basically Britain, France, Russia, Serbia, Italy eventually, and USA. I don't know if all these groups were a part of the Entente thingy, but we're just gonna call them Entente Bros because that's a fun thing to say. But going back to this Archduke Franz Ferdinand, the dude, he was assassinated. He was like one of these Central Powers dudes. He was like a leader of, I believe, Austria or Hungary. I forgot which. But he was out in Bosnia, and there's some hand assassin guy that didn't like it, so he gave him the boot. Oh gosh, okay. Yeah, but so Ferdinand dude, he was with Austria and Germany, and Serbia and Russia didn't really like this guy, so they had some dude kill him off. And so that created World War I, basically. That was the initiation of the conflictation. And so initially, Italy wasn't all for this war thing. They just kind of kept out of it at first. So, Germany, they're at war. All the Central Powers are at war with the Entente Bros. And this kind of worked against them because they're the Central Powers, so they thought that they would dominate trade, which they did create a barrier of all of these outside countries from trading with each other, but at the same time, now Germany couldn't really trade with anyone else because they were also surrounded by other countries. So USA couldn't trade with them. All their enemies obviously didn't really want to trade with them, so they were kind of not doing a whole lot of trading, which is not good. And because of this, They got hungry. They didn't have a whole lot of food to eat. They had to cut back on midnight munchies, Taco Bell late nights. They didn't really have a whole bunch of firepower because of it. They were lacking that because they couldn't get it through trading, and that was probably a huge bummer for them. So what they ended up having to do is they had to try and trade to neutral countries that weren't really in the war yet. USA initially wasn't in the war to begin with, so they're trying to trade with them, but then Britain kind of blocked them off. They had ships out there kind of guarding, so that way USA couldn't really trade with Germany, and that didn't make them happy. So going into World War I, Germany was all like, we're gonna own trading, we're gonna do really good at this, and that wasn't the case. They ended up having to collect they basically received more goods through exports versus sending stuff out, so it wasn't really evening out, and that was a big bummer for them. So getting into the war and the fighting and all that, there's a whole bunch of really cool things that they invented. They recently invented the airplane, hashtag Wright brothers, how you doing? And so planes really didn't do a whole lot of fighting. It was kind of a new concept. They recently discovered they could put guns on airplanes. You could do that. They also discovered you could put guns on moving vehicles, also known as the tank. It was definitely more effective for tanks, not nearly as effective for airplanes. There's a few casualties, a few people got hurt and died and stuff. But for the most part, the planes were more so used for scouting out the other territory, seeing what was up, seeing what they were about, kind of doing some sneaky spy stuff. Dude, but yeah, the tanks, let me tell ya, basically they were a barrier that moved. And also, you throw a little trailer on the back of it and move some supplies on that sucker. It was used for that too, basically just moving goods and all that fun stuff. And then another cool thing, we had some submarine action. Going back to that barrier of British ships blocking off Germany from trading with USA. Germany didn't like that, so they had a submarine, and they used their submarine to do some sneaky ambushes on these ships. And back in the days, it wasn't really cool to do ambushes because the opposing side would be all like, "Hey, yo, bro, you gotta show me you're here first before you can attack me. Like, how you about to hit me and not be straight up, bro?" And so that wasn't really the morally appropriate thing to do in war. Which, I mean, you're killing people. It's all not really all that moral, but I guess that was even more immoral to do it sneakily. But Germany was like, we're gonna break the rules. So they were sneaks. But the cool thing is, here's a little side note, the submarine was actually initially created during the Civil War. And so it was used by the Union side. And this is crazy, man. So the Union, they would create this basically underground boat or submarine. It'd be weighted down with water, and they would basically attach explosives to the tip of the sub, and then the dude driving it would just go right into a boat. He would take full damage. They usually die because when you have an explosive attached to a submarine and it hits a boat and you're in the submarine, you usually don't do too good. So they usually die. The death rate for that was, I think, like 100%, around there, give or take 0. So yeah, it's gotten better. It has gotten better. Not as many deaths or suicide missions with subs. But yeah, the tanks, going back to the tanks, they were really effective for the Entente brothers. It was really effective with advancing on the German troops. Just imagine, like, if you're German and you just see this moving machine gun, you're like, what? You can't do that. But they did it. They did it, and they dabbed on them. They got dabbed on hardcore, my dude. Now, while World War I is happening, Russia, they're part of the Entente dudes. And, during all of this, they're going through some personal issues. You have like this group of Reds and you have the group of Whites. So the Reds, they were kind of more for wanting the war to end, but they were also Soviets. They were kind of like the communist side of what they wanted government-wise. And then you have the Whites, and they wanted to continue the war, but they wanted a republic democracy, which is kind of more aligned with what everyone else in the Entente brothers wanted. And so eventually the Whites ended up winning because the war's been going on for a few years now, and they kind of just wanted out of the war. And so they ended up with the Reds winning because they wanted the war to end. So they ended up signing a treaty with Germany, basically saying, hey, like, we're not going to fight you anymore. And so that's kind of how communism started to kick up in Russia. So with the USA, they kind of got to the World War I game a little late into the game. They initially wanted to be neutral. They didn't really want to fight. The only thing that they would have earned by winning was fighting for democracy. And they didn't really think it was worth it at the time. They weren't really directly impacted by anything. But then they interacted with some juicy mail from Germany to Mexico that they intertwined with. And they got this before Mexico got it. And this mail basically said, from Germany to Mexico, yo, Mexico, what up? If you go, like, mess up America, dab on them, then we will give you some of America's land when we win. So America got this message instead of Mexico, and they're like, dude, that's not cool. How are you about to play us like that? So this definitely broke the Monroe Doctrine, which is basically this thing saying to everywhere else in the world with Asia and Africa and Europe, basically stating, yo, we are going to dominate America. This is our place, and we're going to imperialize the rest of it, so you can just go away, and we're gonna claim it all for ourselves. And when they first released this, everyone else was like, dude, I don't care. If I want to go there, I'm going to, but I don't want to, bro. So the other nations, like, they weren't about it at the time anyways, because they were doing their own stuff, so they just kind of disregarded it. But this message from Germany to Mexico is the first time that this Monroe Doctrine was scrutinized. I think that's the right way to use that word. And so America was like, dude, you can't do that. We're gonna go to war with you, bro. That was not cool. And so that's kind of when America goes to war. And initially, they don't really do anything. But then, as the war kind of comes to an end, when they start retreating, that's when America really starts to kick in and dab on the haters, if you catch my lingo. So getting close to the end of the war, just kind of re-summarizing Germany's goals, they basically wanted to remove Russian powers from Europe, and they wanted to take over that land, you know, get that juicy oil. How you doing? And then they also wanted to expand their lands to other places. And so initially they kind of pushed out, but then as the war came to a close, the Entente brothers, they started to push back. Also, with all that lands that German received after Russia retreated, Germany and all the other Central Powers just didn't have enough troops to cover all that lands that they've taken over, so they were kind of forced to retreat. The one plus side to this was having all this land. The Central Powers had all the resources that they needed, so they really didn't have to trade as much anymore because they had all that going in their favor. And so at this point, Germany really got what all they wanted. They got their expansion, they got their resources, they got their centralization. And so if they would have called quits then, who knows, maybe it would have all been good in the hood. Maybe not. I don't know. But alas, Germany was greedy. They wanted Belgium and Eastern France, so they continued to fight and push that direction. But then eventually Germany just didn't have the troops to continue pushing, so they eventually had to retreat. So they retreat, Germany loses, Central Powers loses, and Germany becomes a democracy. And so at the end of the war, the technical winners were the Entente bros. The problem is, especially with France took a lot of the damage, so they technically won, but they lost because their land was destroyed from all the fighting and the breakdance battles. So they won, but they really lost. The economic winners, the true winners of this fiesta, was the USA and Japan. Japan didn't really fight a whole lot with the Central Powers, but they had their own stuff going on over in their kind of area. They were off to the side doing their own stuff. But so these two countries, USA and Japan, they both got a lot of the war. They made a lot of money through trading and all that, and they also did not have to recover from any of their lands being completely destroyed. So at the end of the war, they got this thing called the Paris Peace Conference. You got these dudes meeting up, 4 super sweet dudes. You got United States Woodrow Wilson, and then you got Minister David Lloyd George, Italian Prime Minister Vittorio Orlando, and French Premier Georges Clemenceau. And they're all names I can't pronounce. Basically, you got USA, you got France, you got Britain, and of course, who else but Italy? They're all teaming up. They're all making plans. They're all talking about, hey, this is what we're gonna do to make the world a better place. And so they eventually create a whole bunch of really cool things that made the world more safe. Also, Japan was amongst the top 5, but they kind of just left Japan out of this Elite Four. So Japan was just kind of off to the side. Basically, they were brought up whenever they dealt with Asian transactions and stuff with Asia. Other than that, they're like, yeah. So the agreements that were made was Germany had to pay off a bunch of France's damages, and also the other Central Powers had to do some war payments. But Germany did not really want to help out with paying any of this, just because they felt like, yeah, we technically lost, but did we really? we got all this lands and we did all this stuff. We don't think we should have to pay all of France's stuff off. But France is like, bro, look what you did, dude. You messed us up. You done goofed us. You done goofed us good. And so Germany basically was very stubborn with paying off all their war dues. But at the same time, there were some other stuff going on where Britain also wanted to get paid for stuff where they didn't really take any war damage, but they still wanted money for like their soldiers that fought. Basically, they just kind of made the agreements to where they got as much money from Germany as possible. Also, USA initially made an effort to help out some of the war damages. They kind of helped out with giving out goods and material to help fix stuff. France was kind of hoping that like USA would kind of continue paying for stuff, but USA was like, all right, bro, you gotta buy it now. We'll still sell it to you, we'll trade it over to you, but we need something in return because America, we need stuff too, dog. Gotta be independent, even if you are completely broke and dead and beaten up, which, it happens, dude. But yeah, going back to Britain, they're all like, yo, Germany, we didn't take any damage, but give us money. And Germany was like, dude. But at the same time, Germany still definitely should have paid to France. They were slacking on that, and they had the money. They were being greedy, man. They were being greedy. Another thing that happened was the Central Powers ended up having split up. They turned into like Poland, Czechoslovakia, Yugoslavia, etc., etc. Basically splitting up the powers, making sure that one big power didn't start another world war, and that individual places kind of had their own rulers and stuff. They also make sure that Germany reduced their military and imperial influence, basically making sure that Germany wasn't coming in hot anywhere and being aggressive. They wanted to kind of have them chill out for a little bit. But dude, going back to Britain, man, they really wanted money from Germany. They were kind of mad that Germany was just kind of really feeding up France, just loading them up. Britain wanted a part of that, but like Britain didn't really get attacked all that much, so it's like, Britain, chill Britain. But at the same time, this did hurt Britain in trade because France was getting all this stuff, and Britain, they wouldn't be getting as many material from Germany. There just wasn't an availability because Germany was in the middle of helping France out. But at the same time, Britain is learning from this because they then suffered they suffered industrial stagnation and high unemployment, because, I don't know, but it happened. But yeah, France was a little upset with the USA leaving them. But USA is like, dude, we just wanted peace, bro. Like, we'll help you out a little bit, but you gotta figure it out on your own eventually, man. But then Europe is all like, USA, dude, you need us to be healthy for you to be healthy. And USA just wasn't seeing it that way. They just wanted to not give them free stuff. They didn't want to pay for their stuff through taxes. They wanted to go back to trading. But yeah, can we go back to Russia siding with Germany right before the end of the war? They were like, yo, Germany, we'll call it even. And then right after, they defeat Central Powers in Germany, and then everyone's all looking at Russia, like, all the Entente bros are like, Russia, dude, why did you do that? We're gonna have to make you pay now. But yeah, after the war ended, they basically turned into communists. And Europe was like, yeah, that sucks. That sucks that you're not a democracy, dude, bro, dude, potato chip. And man, dude, going back to France and Germany, like, Germany could have just paid everything off. They could have hugged it out, but Germany just didn't follow through. They didn't follow through on that treaty that was made. Not a cool move by Germany. Germany whined about war dues, didn't have it nearly as bad as other neutral or central power countries. It made Germany look bad. But Germany, from their perspective, they saw war dues as unjust. Germany could afford war dues, but weren't cooperative. And so that's basically my sum of World War I and post-World War I. That really sums about everything up that you really need to know about World War I.